Okay, so remember that crazy election night?
Yeah.
The night Donald Trump, staged that political comeback and ended up
Oh,
back in the White House? Yeah, a total shocker. I mean, it sent shockwaves through, well, pretty much everything.
yeah.
But today we're going to zero in on one particularly interesting aftershock, I think.
Oh, yeah.
The world of cryptocurrency.
It really is remarkable how something happening in Washington, can trigger a tsunami on the digital exchanges.
It is. And for those of you who follow the crypto markets, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Bitcoin, the OG of crypto, it just went totally ballistic after those election results came in. I mean, we're talking a record-shattering climb to over $75,000.
Wow.
So what gives? What happened? Why did Trump's victory send Bitcoin on a rocket ride?
Well, to really understand that, I think we have to look at how investors interpret political changes, right? A new administration often signals a potential shift in economic policies, and the crypto world is very, very sensitive to these signals.
So it's not really about Trump himself then. It's more about what his presidency might mean for the future of crypto.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The markets are always forward-looking, you see. They're always trying to anticipate what's coming next. And in this case, a lot of investors seem to believe that a Trump administration could actually be good news for crypto.
So they're betting on a pro-crypto
Yeah.
Trump, so to speak.
Yeah.
But what makes them think that?
Well, there's a few things fueling this perception. Remember back in his first term when Trump talked about, the need to reduce regulations?
Yeah.
Well, that resonates with a lot of people in the crypto space who feel that excessive government oversight is really stifling innovation. They see a Trump presidency as, potentially ushering in a more hands-off approach, letting the crypto market just flourish.
Ah, so less red tape, more green candles. That makes sense. But I think, wasn't there also some talk about Trump's past comments on Bitcoin itself?
Yes, you're right. He hasn't always been like a huge cheerleader for Bitcoin,
Yeah.
but he's also hinted at seeing its potential, particularly as a global competitor to the US dollar. This kind of ambiguity combined with his, deregulatory stance, it's created a sense of cautious optimism, I'd say, among some crypto investors.
Cautious optimism. Interesting. So not everyone's popping champagne just yet, but
Yeah.
they're definitely keeping a close eye on things.
Oh, absolutely. They're watching to see if those hints translate into concrete, policy actions that could really benefit the crypto market.
And speaking of actions, the market reaction after the election, it wasn't just limited to Bitcoin, was it?
No, no, not at all. It was like this chain reaction across the entire financial landscape.
Yeah.
The US dollar had a noticeable bump stock. Futures were pointing to a strong opening on Wall Street, and even crypto-related stocks like Coinbase and MicroStrategy,
Yeah.
they were surging in pre-market trading.
So a rising tide lifting all boats, at least for a bit. It sounds like Wall Street was having a party that night.
Yeah, you could say that. And I think the common thread through all of this is investor confidence. When people believe that the future looks bright, that growth and stability are on the horizon, well, they're more likely to invest. And that drives up prices, strengthens markets.
Confidence, the fuel of the financial engine. I like that. But let's go back to crypto for a second. This Bitcoin surge and the market reactions, all that positive energy, does it tell us anything about where things might be headed in the long run?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And while no one has a crystal ball, there are some interesting forecasts floating around. Some analysts are predicting that Bitcoin could hit $100,000 by the end of the year.
Wow, $100,000 Bitcoin. That's a lot of pizza. But seriously, what's driving that kind of projection?
It's a combination of factors, really. There's this anticipated wave of favorable regulations that we've been talking about, which could attract more institutional investors. Think big players like hedge funds and pension funds dipping their toes into the crypto pool.
Right.
That kind of influx of capital could really boost the market.
So the big money is watching, just waiting for the right time to jump in. And what about the average person? Where do they fit into all this?
That's where things get really interesting. Because you see, if these predictions hold true and Bitcoin keeps climbing, it could mean greater accessibility to cryptocurrencies for everyone. We might see easier ways to buy and sell and use crypto in everyday transactions. Imagine paying for groceries with Bitcoin, booking flights with Ethereum, or even getting your salary in stablecoins.
Okay, now that's a future I can get behind. Paying for my morning coffee with Bitcoin. Count me in.
But before we all get swept up in the crypto utopia dream, it's important to remember that there are potential downsides to think about as well.
Right, it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Okay.
So what are some of the clouds on the horizon?
Well, one concern is a potential for increased government control. Even if those initial regulations are good for the crypto industry, they could always change down the line. Governments around the world are still trying to figure out how to approach crypto, and there's always the risk of them, overreaching,
Hmm.
trying to clamp down on its use or even banning it altogether.
That's a sobering thought. So even with all this excitement, it's important to remember that the future of crypto is still very much in flux.
Exactly. It's a dynamic space constantly evolving, and it's intertwined with so many other factors. Technological advancements, social trends, global economics, you name it.
Okay, so buckle up, everyone. This is just the beginning of the ride.
Indeed. And as we move forward in this deep dive, we'll be exploring those other factors, unpacking the potential long-term impacts of this political shift on the crypto landscape, and really examining what it all means for you.
Sounds like we've got a lot more ground to cover. But before we do, let's take a quick break to let all this information sink in. We'll be right back to continue our exploration of this fascinating and often unpredictable world of crypto.
It's easy to get caught up in those price swings and the hype.
Huh.
But I think it's important to kind of zoom out for a second and consider the bigger picture here.
Okay, let's do that. What's the broader context that we need to be thinking about when we talk about crypto in this election?
Well, for starters, I think this wasn't just a simple, contest between two candidates. This election really kind of exposed some deep divisions within American society. Anxieties about the economy, a desire for change, a sense of uncertainty about the future.
And are you saying that this Bitcoin surge that we saw, it's tied into those feelings of uncertainty?
Absolutely. Cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin, they've often been seen as a hedge against those more traditional financial systems. When people feel uncertain about the future, they tend to look for alternative investments, things that might hold their value, even if the traditional markets take a hit.
So help me understand this hedge concept a little bit better. Can you give me like a concrete example?
Sure. Imagine a scenario where inflation just goes through the roof, right? And the value of the dollar plummets. People might start flocking to Bitcoin because its supply is limited. There would only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in existence. Unlike a government that can print more money and, dilute its value, Bitcoin scarcity is built into its code. So this makes it really appealing to some investors as a way to protect their wealth in times of, economic turmoil.
Ah, that makes sense. So it's like a digital life raft in a sea of economic uncertainty.
Yeah.
And this election, with all its twists and turns, definitely added fuel to that fire.
Precisely. And this highlights a really crucial point, I think, about the crypto market. It's very sensitive to sentiment.
Yeah.
News events, even just social media trends can cause big price fluctuations.
It's like the entire market is on a collective emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to Trump for a minute and his potential impact on crypto. The Gabbar article mentions some specific policies that his administration might actually implement to favor the crypto industry. Can you walk me through those?
Sure. One of the most talked about things is this potential deregulation. Right now, the crypto space is a bit like the Wild West. There's a lot of uncertainty about how it's regulated, and that can really scare away some of those bigger players.
So more clarity, less red tape.
Hmm.
Got it. But how would that actually work in practice?
Well, one policy that's being talked about is a tax exemption for long-term crypto holdings. This would give investors more incentive to, hold on to their assets for a longer time instead of constantly trading them, and that could lead to more stability in the market.
Interesting. So less day trading, more long-term thinking. That could definitely be a game changer. But what about the other side of the coin? What are some potential downsides or risks that we need to be considering, with a more pro-crypto Trump administration?
Well, one concern is that even if the initial regulations are favorable to the crypto industry, they could always change down the line. Governments are still figuring out how to approach crypto, and there's always a chance that they might change course, tighten regulations, or even implement outright bans in the future.
So it's a bit of a tightrope walk then. Trying to encourage innovation while also protecting consumers and preventing any potential misuse of crypto. It sounds like a tough balance to strike.
It is. And it's not just government regulations either. There are other challenges facing the crypto world, like the environmental impact of crypto mining, especially for those energy-intensive cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's been a big concern lately. All those massive computer farms churning away, consuming tons of electricity.
Yeah.
Feels like a bit of a contradiction. This super futuristic technology with a big carbon footprint.
Exactly. And, if crypto adoption keeps growing, this issue is only going to get bigger. We need to see more sustainable solutions if crypto is really going to become a mainstream form of currency.
So it's not just about the technology itself then. It's also about the infrastructure and energy sources that power it. It's a good reminder that the crypto world is connected to so many other aspects of our society and environment.
Absolutely. And that's what I think makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. You see, we're not just talking about a new type of asset or investment. We're talking about a potential paradigm shift in how we think about money and value and even governance.
Whoa, okay. Now you're really getting me intrigued. A paradigm shift, huh? So what does that actually look like? What are some concrete examples of how crypto could actually change our lives beyond just buying and selling stuff?
Well, one area where crypto is already making a difference is in the world of decentralized finance, or DeFi. Think of it as like a parallel financial system that runs outside of those traditional banks and institutions.
So instead of relying on banks, we'd be using like algorithms,
Yeah.
blockchain technology.
Exactly. With DeFi, you can lend, borrow, and invest your money directly with other people, cutting out that middleman and potentially accessing more favorable terms.
Interesting. So it's like peer-to-peer finance, but powered by crypto and blockchain technology.
You got it. And that's just one example. Crypto is being explored for all sorts of things, like supply chain management and secure voting systems, and even creating new forms of digital identity.
Wow. Okay. My mind is officially blown. It sounds like crypto is way more than just a currency or an investment. It's like a catalyst for a whole bunch of innovations and disruptions.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to understand not just the technical parts of crypto, but also its social and economic and even political implications.
It's amazing to think that it all started with that crazy election result that sent Bitcoin on this wild ride. Who knew that a political earthquake could launch such a fascinating journey into the world of digital currency?
Well, that's the beauty of the deep dive, isn't it? We take you beyond the headlines and explore how all these seemingly separate events are actually connected.
So where do we go from here? What else can our listeners expect as we continue this deep dive into crypto?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore. We'll be looking at the potential long-term impacts of this political shift on the crypto world and what it all means for you. And we'll also be exploring some of the ethical and societal implications of this rapidly evolving technology.
It sounds like we have a lot more to unpack. But before we do that, let's take a quick pause to gather our thoughts and let all this information sink in. We'll be right back to continue our exploration of this fascinating and often unpredictable world of crypto. Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of wrap things up on this deep dive into, this whole intersection of crypto and politics.
It has been quite the journey, hasn't it? From that surprise election to, the Bitcoin surge and all the potential implications for the future of finance and everything.
It really has.
Yeah.
So as we get to the end of our exploration here, what are some of the key takeaways for our listeners? What should they be paying attention to as this story continues to play out?
Well, I think the first and most important thing is to remember that the crypto market is still relatively young, and it can be really volatile. Prices swing wildly, and there's always the risk of losing money.
Right. So no betting the farm on Bitcoin, even if it's hitting those new all-time highs.
Exactly. It's essential to be cautious with any crypto investments. Do your research and, never invest more than you can afford to lose.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
So what else should our listeners keep in mind?
We've talked a lot about, the potential impact of government regulations on the crypto market, and whether it's the Trump administration or, any future government for that matter. Regulatory changes can have a huge impact on the value and how accessible cryptocurrencies are.
So basically stay informed and be ready to adapt to those ever-changing regulations.
Precisely. The crypto world is always evolving, and those who stay informed and flexible, they'll be in the best position to navigate all the ups and downs.
That makes sense. Now, beyond just the investment side of things, we've also touched on the potential for crypto to really transform various sectors. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. One area where crypto is already making waves is decentralized finance, or as it's often called, DeFi. This is basically like a parallel financial system that operates completely outside of those traditional banks and institutions.
So instead of using banks, we could use algorithms and blockchain technology to manage our finances.
Exactly. With DeFi, you can lend, borrow, invest directly with other people, cut out the middleman, and you might even get better terms.
So it's kind of like a futuristic version of peer-to-peer finance.
Yeah, you could say that. And DeFi is just one example. Crypto is also being explored for things like managing supply chains, creating more secure voting systems, even establishing new forms of digital identity. The possibilities are really huge, and they're constantly growing.
It's amazing to think about all the potential ripple effects of this technology.
Yeah.
It's like we're right at the beginning of a whole new digital era.
It really is. And just like with any new era, there will be challenges and some uncertainty along the way. But there's also this incredible sense of opportunity and the potential for positive change.
So what's the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this as they kind of navigate this complex and ever-changing world of crypto?
I think it boils down to this: stay curious, stay informed, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The crypto space is constantly evolving, and the more you understand, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions and maybe even benefit from the opportunities that come up.
Well said. And remember, folks, this deep dive is just a starting point. We encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep engaging with this fascinating technology because it really does have the potential to reshape our world in some really big ways.
Absolutely. The future of crypto is still being written, and it's up to all of us to make sure that future is responsible and beneficial.
That's a great point to end on. So with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the exciting and always evolving world of cryptocurrency. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.